In 2018, I chaired a hearing of the Senate Aging Committee on why the cost of insulin was so high. And Mr. Chairman, one of the witnesses was a father from Maine who was going to Canada to get insulin for his 10-year-old son. What we found was a system of getting insulin from the manufacturer to the customer that was rife with perverse incentives, convoluted and opaque. So opaque that the witness that we had, who had done the study on the system, could not fully explain the chart showing all the links. So I want to put up a chart that shows insulin list price, which is the top line, versus net prices from 2012 to 2021. And starting with you, Mr. Ricks, I want to find out where the money is going in that gap between the list price and the net price over 9 years' time. And as you can see, that gap has gotten bigger. You've testified that I think it was 80 cents per dollar doesn't go back to the manufacturer. Mr. Hudson said 84 cents, so similar. So explain to us who gets that money, because I can tell you it's not, for the most part, going to the consumer at the pharmacy counter. Mr. Ricks.
It's a good question. I can explain much better what are the costs that make up the bottom line, because from that's our revenue. We pay our workers, we make the product, we pay to distribute it, and we invest 25% of that line in research and development. The difference are concessions made in price negotiations with large payers like the PBMs here today. I think you'll have to ask them how that gets redistributed in the system.
Mr. Hudson.
That's already a very complete answer. It's the same for Sanofi.
And Mr. Hudson, you would agree that this money does not find its way, in most cases, to the consumer at the pharmacy counter?
I would agree. I mean, over the last decade, the list price has increased over 50%, but the out-of-pocket expense, what somebody's paying at the counter, has increased 45%. So it's, on average, not making its way to the counter for the person who's trying to make a choice between groceries and medicines.
So I think we have a very strange system here, because, to say the least, because most of us would think that the rebate, the discount that is negotiated by the PBMs would largely benefit the consumer at the pharmacy counter. But in fact, it goes to the PBMs themselves, and it goes to the plan sponsors. That could be an insurer, that could be a large employer with an ERISA plan, but it's not making its way down. So the insurers will tell you that, well, we use it to moderate rates, to keep rates lower for everyone. The problem with that explanation is insurance is based on the principle that the healthy are subsidizing the sick. What we're doing is turning this on its head. So in order to lower the premiums for the healthy, we are not passing on the savings to the sick. Mr. Ricks, would you agree with that?
I agree that happens frequently, and I think particularly where Senator Cassidy was going with the high deductible phase in particular, where patients are exposed to full list pricing, there's an enormous difference between what the system pays and what they've paid, and that creates a surplus that's supporting premiums or other things.
So I want to ask our three PBM representatives. Mr. Joyner, who owns your PBM company?
CVS Health.
And isn't there a connection also to Aetna, the large insurer?
That's correct.
And Dr. Kusner, who owns Express Scripts?
Senator, the Cigna Group owns Express Scripts, and if I,
Another large insurer, correct?
Cigna Healthcare, yes.
And Ms. Gianfranco, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, who owns Optum?
Optum's owned by United Health Group.
And again, another large employer, another large insurer. So to me, this is an example of the system's incentives. If you are, in fact, negotiating for your clients, you're negotiating for your owners, who are all large insurers, for other plan sponsors that are insurance companies, for large self-insured employers, but you're not negotiating for the customer because it's not, to be fair, it's not up to you what the people who hire you or for whom you work decide to do with that discount. They could pass it all on, but the evidence is overwhelming that they do not. I want to go back to an issue that Senator Kaine raised, and that is the difficulty that biosimilars have in getting onto the market, at getting chosen by a PBM for a formulary. This makes no sense whatsoever to me if you care about lowering prices. So, Mr. Hudson, Senator Kaine talked about the fact that when you come up with biosimilars that are cheaper than your branded product, you can't get chosen. But it's not just you. Even when a competitor comes up with a biosimilar that is way cheaper, and I would use Viatris as an example, which came up with insulin Gargine, which was 65% cheaper than Lantus. It couldn't get on the formulary. So it takes the same product, relaunches it at only 5% lower, and guess what? It gets chosen.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Hickenlooper.
This is one of the most amazing hearings I've heard. It reminds me of a long time ago when I used to be in the restaurant